Off the Shelf. I'm your host, Yvonne Wolf. Today, our special guest is psychotherapist, EFT practitioner, and author Allison Jayne Ewing, with her first book, Find Love Again, Learn to Date Like a Goddess. Welcome, Allison.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Well, can you tell us what motivated you to write this book?
Yes, I became motivated to write this book because I personally was divorced at 42, and I had to start back in the dating pool at midlife, and it is definitely a struggle.
Wow, what a huge decision, and what a huge milestone in your life, right?
Yeah. It definitely was something that was unexpected, right? Nobody goes into marriage thinking they're going to be divorced, and nobody grows up as a little girl thinking they'll be single again in their 40s or 50s.
Right.
And yet, because of my background as a therapist, I knew I had a lot of information about human behavior and human psychology. What I did, though, realize once I was divorced is I didn't know very much about relationships and relational psychology. So I sort of did what I do, and I took a really deep dive on all that, and I researched the heck out of that field.
Yeah.
And I started sharing it with my single friends and realizing that a lot of stuff that I knew and sort of took for granted as a therapist, they really didn't know. It would help them with dating. And so that was the motivation for me in putting together this book. Was I kind of wrote it basically like a love letter to my single friends.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
Now
that inspired me.
That's a really very compassionate approach to your, to combine your profession with your personal life.
Exactly.
And is that what was the incubation period then? Was this something that was on the back burner after a while, or?
Yeah. I've been told my whole life I should write a book. I'm a storyteller. I tell lots of stories, and so I guess it was always in the back of my mind to write a book. But at some point, maybe 4 years or so into single life and dating life, I really had this idea, and this even just this title of Date Like a Goddess. I thought, oh, that'd be great to teach women how to date like a goddess. And so
the confidence,
right? Exactly.
Wow, the bravado,
right.
That sounds daring.
Yeah. So I thought to myself, okay, I'm going to write this book, and I had one friend in particular. We would go to the Glenview Grind actually and have coffee, and we'd discuss it, but I just couldn't get myself to do it. And then COVID hit, and I thought, okay, now I have all the time in the world. I'm definitely going to write this book.
No
and
interruptions.
I didn't. Yeah. But I didn't write it. That's the funny part.
Okay.
I don't know what happened. So I did write an outline, though. So June of 2020 was when I wrote the outline, so I had that. And it wasn't until about a little over a year ago, last spring, that I was working with my mentor in what I practice, which is called EFT tapping, where we tap on acupressure points.
I saw that in your book. Yes,
Yeah.
very interesting. Right in the beginning, you talk about the tapping.
Yes, and we can talk more about it too today. But what happened was, to get me to write the book, was my mentor said, we were just discussing my sort of angst about turning 50 next year, and he said, well, let's use EFT tapping and figure out what this is about. And what came out of that process was, I've always wanted to write a book, and somehow the idea of turning 50 and not having done it felt like I was missing something.
Yeah, that put a little fire under
It did. It did.
Your bowel
Yep.
story.
Yep. And so I
that's
started writing it last April, and I finished it by September and published it. And it was a really great experience.
No, that sounds like very well organized, and even though it may sound like it took a long time, but I think the outline was the first step.
It was, right.
have
And then
an
I kind of
outline?
marinated it for 2 years, and I do think that helped. And I have to fully give credit to my publisher, because the publisher I found, she actually specializes in getting people to write nonfiction books in 6 months or less.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
So there is kind of a training camp for
A
this.
little bit, yes,
Okay,
yes. She has
wow.
a process
Yeah.
that we go through, and the first part of the process was developing the outline, and I already had that. So I was able to kind of speed through that as well, and then go
Yeah,
forward.
many times you have to work with an editor on the outline because writers just write. They,
Yes.
they have well, from my experience of
Yes.
interviewing authors, as I am not an author myself, I have found that the outline is really something
Yeah.
that may take a long time.
Yes.
Even that, because it requires the help of an editor and so
Yes.
forth. So that
Yeah.
is good that you have something, a publisher that was also gave you editorial guidelines.
Yeah, oh yeah, for sure. She has a whole editorial team that helped me, and they did help me rearrange the outline a little bit. And then by the time that part was done, it was really easy to actually write it.
The sections at a time,
Yep.
right? Oh,
Yep,
I
chapters at a time.
see. I see.
Exactly.
Well, that sounds like sounds like someone with an organized mind.
Yes, she definitely does.
So,
Yeah.
so you don't take credit for it.
I know. I really think, well, the one thing I will also say is I realized that I had a lot of emotional and psychological blocks to writing the book. And that is where the EFT tapping comes in, because EFT tapping is when you tap on certain acupressure points, you send a calming signal to the fight or flight part of your brain, and it extinguishes the emotion. Because your brain can't be in its parasympathetic, its relaxed state, and its sympathetic state, its geared up state at the same time.
That's very interesting.
Yes, so
Very
the tapping puts you in that parasympathetic, and it sort of extinguishes whatever emotional blocks you might have getting in your way.
Because we think of it as, we usually say fight or flight, but there's also a freeze, right?
Yes, fight or freeze,
cannot
exactly.
come out. I mean, your story wouldn't
I
need
was
to come out.
frozen for 2 years, I think, on this
Wow,
book. And once I started tapping with my mentor, and I realized, the blocks were probably blocks a lot of authors have about feeling exposed. My book is very personal. I tell a lot of personal stories, a lot of vulnerable stories. Feeling seen, we tend to shy away from those things. I wasn't sure, what would, my community think, or my kids think, or my,
being on the spotlight like
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
About a very personal issue and an intimate issue around dating.
So would you say that writing itself has been introspective process?
Yes, for sure. Yes, it was really amazing and interesting how the whole book came out, because one of the things that our publisher trains us in is to just write forward. She calls it writing forward. So I would set a timer. I had my outline, of course, and I would set a timer for 2 hours, and I would write one chapter based on the outline, and I just let it flow. And she would say, don't edit at all while you're writing. Don't just leave
Don't go
typos.
back. Yeah.
Don't go back at all. Just let it flow. And so what would happen is I'd just be sort of writing along, and then the story would start coming out of me. Sometimes surprised me. Some of the stories that end up in that book, I didn't know I was going to write those. They just sort of flowed.
It wasn't the one you started maybe select to.
Yes. Or maybe I had a vague idea, but then it flowed. And every time, it was amazing. Every time, about an hour and 40 minutes to an hour and 50 minutes in, all of a sudden the chapter would just wrap up. It was a really cool process, because I say to people, I feel like the book was written through me more than by me, because it just flowed in this way. It was
Fascinating.
Yeah, it was a fascinating experience.
Not what I often hear about
Really?
writers.
Do you? Yeah, that's interesting.
And who is your intended audience? I know you mentioned that being divorced, and also being probably older divorced, so you didn't expect that, right, in your life.
Right,
So.
exactly, yes. I definitely had a vision of sort of an ideal reader, was a woman in her late 40s, maybe early 50s, older kids or kids out of the house, who's gotten a divorce and is now, back into the dating pool.
We have heard of that, I guess it's called the silver anniversary.
Oh, I haven't heard of that.
Have you ever heard of that?
No.
And so that is
It's a common
it's
time.
a difficult time to be on your own.
Yes,
right?
for sure. And like I said, I really wrote it from, I started every chapter. I kind of have this rose quartz heart on my desk, and I would kind of just hold it to my heart and think, And I would think, okay, what do I want to tell my ideal reader? How do I want to help her with this next aspect, whatever the next chapter was? But what's been really interesting for me is I had a lot of married friends of mine read the book because, to support me. And they've all said, oh, wow, this was really helpful. I got things out of it. It helped me with my marriage. It helped me, think about things or engage with my husband differently. So that's been kind of fun, exciting surprise I wasn't expecting.
Well, marriage is just constantly building a relationship, right?
Right.
So if it's, let's just say it's never too late to start like dating your husband.
Yes, exactly.
My goodness.
I just didn't think about that or anticipate that. So it's just kind of been cool that, that has come up.
Yeah. Well, and of course, divorce can happen at any age. So I would think a younger woman would gain something about the experience as well. Like, what are they looking for, right?
Right, absolutely. I do feel that I wish I had my own book in my 20s. I think it would have made me a better dater. I think I would have made different choices. And so I have encouraged a lot of my friends who have daughters, older teens or in their 20s. I'm like, read the book. I mean, the first chapter is definitely geared at a woman who is like now alone and faced, with single life. So I said, just skip the first chapter and they'll get stuff out of the rest of it, because there's a lot of things about, one of the chapters is sort of about how the idea that Cinderella, the story of Cinderella, kind of messed us up when we were kids, where we think as women it's our job to be chosen by men rather than be the one who gets to do the choosing. So we have this idea that we have to show up on these dates and be pretty and cute and all this and get the man to pick us, rather than kind of maybe have a more what I call goddess kind of vibe of, you know what, I'm showing up here as me because I'm amazing and I'm a confident woman and I'm going to decide if I want to choose you.
Right, right.
And I don't know that many young girls are dating that way. And I think that if you are, A, you're going to make a better choice for yourself. B, you're going to be more yourself on your dates. And I think that when you are feeling more confident, you're just going to even enjoy dating a little bit more.
Wow, those are good thoughts to have.
Yeah.
Be yourself more, right? Enjoy being more confident, and you'll probably attract someone who is equally confident.
Exactly.
Right? Okay.
Yes.
So those are good thoughts. And okay, so then let's talk about that goddess on the cover.
Yes.
How did you find her?
I love my cover so much. I love it so much. So my publisher actually works with a very talented cover designer. And she had a questionnaire that I filled out, and she asked me a lot of questions. And I told her I had this vision of sort of an archetypal goddess of some sort on the cover.
Yeah.
And I told her I really wanted to convey, confidence and strength.
Warrior pose.
Yes. Okay. And she said, okay, and what kind of colors do you want? I said, I think maybe like oranges and reds, fiery colors.
Yes, warm.
Yes. And then she came back with this, and I was blown away. I was like, this is exactly perfect. I mean, it was more perfect than I could have ever imagined for myself. It's so great. I love my cover so much.
So there wasn't a second choice.
She actually gave me 6 options, but this was the first one, and I was like, nope, I'm done. That's the one. That's the one I want.
That's what it's meant to be.
Yeah, exactly.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
And you mentioned this bravado, or the goddess, and we talk about the bravado and the confidence.
Yeah.
But you're also talking about in the book, what I read was that it's about a journey, not just pick your guy and that's it.
Right. Because I feel like one of the things that can trip people up in dating is just trying so hard to get to the destination of being in another relationship. And when you are going out and showing up on dates look kind of with this vibe of, are you the one? Are you the one? Are you the one? It's just a vibe that is not attractive, really. And also, you're just missing out on your life. You're not enjoying where you are in the moment. You're not being present in your life. And one of the things I say to the women I work with, because I do have like an online course that goes along with this, is, you're single now, and at some point you're probably not going to be anymore. And so there's actually some fun things about being single that you won't get to have once you're in a relationship. So just enjoy it for what it is now. And I think the hardest part is when we have sadness, loneliness, negativity of any kind, I find it's very difficult to talk yourself out of it consciously. And so I can say these things to my clients and the women I work with, but it's hard for them to shift emotionally, and that's where the EFT tapping comes in.
Yes, I
Because
can
that helps
see
you
that.
shift those negative feelings out of the way.
And I can see that when we know, right, we can read as much as information we want to on the internet, but what we apply is two different things.
Exactly. And that's why when I first discovered EFT tapping, I'm trying to remember how many years ago, 8 or 9 years ago now, I switched from regular talk therapy to only doing this because I feel like it works so much more powerfully on that. Yeah. Because I found like a lot of my clients would have the conscious insight but not be able to do the change.
Yes, they're not ready to, they don't know perhaps even how to turn that on and off.
Right. Or there's some subconscious pattern running in the background telling them it's not safe to change. And that's what the tapping can clear.
Your book is very precise on how to do that on your own, or where to tap, how often, and so this is a very much a self-help book. Did you intend that? I mean, as a therapist, I think you want to help people right from the start, right?
Yes, absolutely. Again, like for me, it was such a passion project to write this book that I basically want tons of women to read it because I feel sincerely like it will help women. And I love that EFT tapping is a tool you can use on your own, that you don't need to go see a practitioner about it. Now, I personally do see a practitioner myself, but I also tap on the regular every day. It's sort of like the difference between brushing your teeth and going to the dentist, right?
Yes.
And so I wanted a self-help guide that women could just read and feel better and change some of their, negative patterns of dating, or a lot of what I talk about is like, don't settle, please don't settle, because settling is, you're doing it out of fear. So if you have a self-help tool like tapping to clear the fear that this is the best I'm going to get, then you won't settle, you'll strive for more, and you'll have hope that there's a better guy out there for you.
Well, and it's also when you think about these, I think about something new that I'm afraid to try, then it's probably easier with a self-help book to understand it before you go to a practitioner who's asking you to tap. Something that could just warm people up to the idea until they're ready to step out into someone's office. I mean, that in itself, I find it's a big intimidating step.
For
to
sure.
go to someone.
Yes, exactly.
And I think your point about that, like who you're looking for, and you're hoping that you're good enough and all that, and perhaps maybe you mentioned that you're thinking of this as a journey you go on together, right?
Yeah.
The destination. I mean, I think a lot of maybe young ladies are thinking about the wedding as like the biggest thing they will accomplish almost, and that's really not what marriage is about. Right.
And it's not what life is about, right? And at any point, there's always more. You're always on a journey. I will say, even with this book journey, I thought, okay, well, I'll publish the book. And that was a destination. But then almost immediately I started on the next journey of, promoting the book. Yes. And so it's on and it's on. There's no sort of final stop place in life, really, because there's always more,
That's a great point to make. I also find for a lot of authors, they may not be ready for that journey into the building relationships from this book.
Yeah.
But I think you seem very ready for that. Can you tell us a little bit more, like about your how you reach out to social media? Do you do that on your own?
Yes, I have been doing that. That's been a little tricky for me because I was never really on social media a whole lot before. So now I'm like learning social media while trying to promote on social media. So it's been interesting. For me, being able to be vulnerable in the book and tell these deeply personal stories felt still safe because it was in writing or something. And I am aware that people want personal. Those are the books I like the best. So that's why I wrote it that way. Yeah. But getting on my phone and videotaping myself and being open and vulnerable in that way is more of a challenge to me. I'm trying to push myself to do it because I know that's what people want. That's what people connect with.
Yes.
and I also want to be clear that I do struggle in the same ways that, everybody who I think would be picking up my book struggles, and I want them to know I've been where you are, or I am where you are, and I can relate. And I think that sometimes that just feels so comforting to people to know they're not alone with their struggle.
Wow, I find it very brave to see you on social media and your videos, and you're just so energetic, and I think that's very important for people to see that, to find that on the days they don't feel so so confident.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, Allison, what is a difficulty that you didn't anticipate? Because it sounds like, wow, it just went from outline, chapter by chapter, everything went great.
Yeah, yep. I had a feeling you were going to ask me that question next because, so kind of as, kind of goes along with what we were just talking about. The biggest difficulty that I faced was I went through a breakup while I was writing this book. And just like any breakup, it was hard. There was grief and loss, and I was trying to work through it, and it was mostly during the editing phase, a couple months before the book came out. But what I noticed was sort of an added, difficulty, and that is it brought up some serious imposter syndrome for me, because I thought, well, who am I to be writing a book and my relationship just fell apart, right?
And the negative self-talk comes back really fast.
Yeah. And it's something that one of my best friends is writing a book too, so we talk about it a lot. This imposter syndrome thing is really interesting because it's something I think everybody goes through, but when it's you going through it, you feel like such a fraud. Yet at the same time, I know that my book can help people. I know it has. I've had lots of people reach out to me and say, oh my gosh, this book was so helpful. It really changed my perspective on dating, or I went from like having no guys to like 5 dates this week. I've literally had those responses. And so I know that it helps, but it's hard when you feel this sense of, oh gosh, who am I to be talking about dating when now I'm single and dating again? So, but I use it. I feel like I use my experience and my vulnerability to connect with people. And to kind of say, even I don't have all the answers, but it's a journey.
And I think it's good also for you to encourage people to keep trying, because I also find that maybe for some young ladies, it's very easy to say no, right? It's very easy to say no to dating someone you just met, right? Yeah. But then the 1 date to 5 days, I think that's a sign of growth, because all of us can use some growth, especially after COVID, when we didn't get any, right? We now talk about the social health, a way that people were not as conscious of.
Right, absolutely.
And I would think dating is part of that social health.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's interesting because I feel like I work with women who, on both sides of that issue. I work with some, especially I think when you're dating again at midlife, some women are closed off and I don't want to date anymore, I'm done. And other women are, I'll just date anybody I can find and sort of don't have the best boundaries, so we have to kind of help both ends of the spectrum on that. And those are two, I think, unique challenges to dating in midlife that aren't as much when you're younger, but can be. They certainly can be. So.
Well, Allison, you and I are such busy moms, but we see each other all the time. I feel like on District 34 events, and now with both of our boys in high school. So what connects you to Glenview outside of that?
Well, I moved here back in 2009 from the city when my son was about to start kindergarten, like a lot of families do. And I grew up in the East Coast. I originally grew up in Massachusetts, a little town called Medfield. Glenview really reminds me of Medfield. So right away I thought, I definitely want to move to this town because of that familiarity. And I just love it. I think it's been a great place to raise kids. And I have to say, my favorite thing about Glenview is we have the most amazing sunsets. Do you ever notice that? When I lived in the city, you can't really see sunsets because of the skyline. And I moved out here and I thought, oh, it's so amazing. I get to see these beautiful sunsets every day, especially when you're driving on Willow West at the end of the day. So I love Glenview.
That's very unique. I haven't heard any
Really?
author say that, really. And I see,
my
I was
favorite thing.
thinking Glenview Grind was just, a lot of people mentioned that.
Yeah.
And for me, the picturesque part of Glenview when I moved here from Los Angeles was that I thought the little houses looked like a Christmas card. You know?
Yes,
So-
exactly.
so
and that's
some of
kind of
those
how my
things-
New England town was.
Yeah, so I can understand that.
Yeah.
Well, Allison, you have so many good thoughts you share with us today. What is your advice for writers? You have a message out there for us?
I do. My message is to write forward and get your book done. I feel so fulfilled with the fact that I finally got my book out there. And I am planning on writing more, and I will definitely do it the same way. So if you're at all thinking about writing, just write forward, get pen to paper, start typing, get it out of you. You will be so thrilled that you did it.
Oh, thank you very much, Allison.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And thank you. Join us next time on Off the Shelf.